Right, welcome back to this series of tutorials where I've been mixing this track from beginning to end. If you've been following this series through, then you'll notice that I've had a change of location, and I'm really sorry for the delay in getting this final part out. I've been moving house, I've been doing all sorts of exciting stuff, but I'm back with this final part where I'm going to take that, effectively that mixed track, that track that's ready to go. I'm going to take you through some mastering processes and show you what it sounds like at the end. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. So I suppose the big question that lots of people ask is, should I be bouncing my track out and then mastering it as just a stereo file in a whole new project, or can I master in my project that I've already got set up? I think the traditionalists would tell you that you should bounce it out and then you should master it just as one stereo track in a new project. And that's totally cool. I'm actually going to master it in the same project, and my reasoning behind that is pretty simple. When you're learning your craft, when you're learning these processes, if you come across a howling error that you've made at this stage in the process, if you've already bounced it out, then it's a real pain to have to go back, edit, rebounce out a new version so you can master the new version. So by doing it in the same project in this way, so by mastering it in the same project that you've been mixing it, if you come to the point where you've gone, I've made a really massive error there, you can just go back and tweak it. And it's all there in the same project. So that's how I'm going to work. Now, you'll remember from the previous session that I had already on my mix bus, I had some tape and I had some limiting. I've taken both of those off now because I'm going to be building a whole mastering chain from scratch. So let's bring in these things one at a time. Just before we do, let's remind ourselves of the mix that we're working with. Okay, we'll play the whole thing at the end. Now, you'll notice on my mix bus, I've got loads of headroom, right? I've got 12.3, so negative 12.3 dB of headroom on my mix bus. Now, lots of people say, how much headroom should I be leaving for my mastering engineer? How much headroom? I think you should be leaving at least 6 dB of headroom. This is really, really healthy. And if you remember at the beginning of this process, I was saying, what I'm going to try and do all the way through is keep to my kind of optimum minus 14 dB all the way through. So, the fact that now on my mix bus I've only crept up by 1.7 dB to minus 12.3 is a real kind of coup to that statement. The fact that I've managed to keep my gain levels in check all the way through to my mix bus, which gives me loads of headroom here to get a really nice and kind of fat and loud mix. So, first thing that I am pulling onto this mix is this plugin here, which is Brainworks Digital V3 from Plugin Alliance. Now I'm using this for some mid-side EQ. You'll see the left-hand section of this plugin is the mono section or the middle channel, and the right-hand section here, the stereo section, is the sides of the mix, the left and the right. Now I'm doing a few basic moves here. So the first thing I'm doing is a high pass on the mids at 30 Hertz. And then I am putting in this little bump at 110 Hertz. I am then also taking out a little bit of 2.8, and I am then putting in a little bit of 1.7. That's all on the mids before I roll off the highs at, sorry, that was at 20K. So I'm just going to solo out the mid channel. I'm going to turn these moves off and then introduce them one at a time. So just the mid channel, and I'll bring in the filters first, so the high pass, low pass, and then these bands one at a time. So these are all really subtle moves, right? What we're not trying to do here with mastering is to make massive, great changes to our mix. We're just trying to gently smooth these things together. Now, this little bump here at 110, that's really important because that is actually at the fundamental pitch of the track. So that's at the frequency of the note A, and this track is in the key of A. So by boosting that, you're basically enhancing the key of the track. So that's a really important move. And then these other two moves here, this little cut was because I didn't like that frequency. It didn't sound very nice. Let's just hear it out. Didn't like that, so I pulled that out a bit, and then I just bumped this 1.7 a little bit because I thought that sounded quite nice. In the sides, I have rolled off the lows a lot more, so up to 120, because I don't want any of that low stuff out the sides. Low passed again, but up at 25k, so you know most humans aren't going to hear that. It's just kind of housekeeping. And then I've got this shelf up in the high end. So let's just bring these things in one at a time. Let me just take them all off here, solo out the sides, and here we go. So it's just clearing out some of that bottom end and giving us a little bit of extra shine on the sides, which is nice. And if we A-B those things together, let's hear what difference that is making. Cool. Okay, the other two things that I'm doing here are I'm using this stereo width dial here, and I'm also using the mono maker. So I'm making everything below 120 hertz mono to keep my bass frequencies really nice and centered, and then I'm spreading the rest. So I'm going to bring those things back in so that you can hear the difference they make. Again, so a couple of subtle little differences, but all these things add up. Now, next in my signal chain, I'm using this little plugin, which is Bass Room from Mastering the Mix. Now, in this plugin, I've actually loaded in my reference track, Decode from Paramore, and analysed the bass frequencies in that track, which has then given me these targets, and it allows me to push or pull the different frequency points. So 0 to 20 hertz, 20 to 40 hertz, 40 to 80, 80 to 160, 160 to 360 hertz. Allows me to 160 to 320 hertz, and allows me to bring in more or less of those frequency points, and then also adjust the cues of each of those bands, which is a really helpful thing. So it means I'm using that reference track, which is, you know, professionally done, and I'm able to use that to really dial in my low end. Let's have a listen to the difference that's making. So, subtle, but again, it's just squeezing that low end in the right place and making sure that in terms of the genre, the style that I'm producing here, it's kind of accurate and to point. Next in my chain, I'm using the brother of Bass Room. This is Mix Room, exactly the same principle. Again, from Mastering the Mix, I've loaded in the same track, analysed a section, and then it will give me targets for that track, but in the upper frequency. So from 320 upwards, up to 20k, and again I can push and pull these things forwards or back. So let's bring that into context. So I've got this kind of nice bit of mid-range that it's bringing out for me, and then the upper frequencies, the real high end, just going back a little bit, which is very nice. And then finally, in terms of my EQ on my mix bus, I'm going to be using Match EQ. So Match EQ, it's a Logic stock plugin. I've analysed the whole track or the whole section that I'm using with the current learn mode. So that's kind of brought in all of my track. Then I've again loaded in decode as my reference track and then matched those things. And then I've dialed that in, so I'm not using a full 100% mix, I'm using a 50% blend. I'm slightly fading the extremities more in the upper frequencies, smoothing the curve a bit and letting the left and right channels work independently, making sure, importantly, that I'm in linear phase mode. So let me bring that in as well. And that, interestingly, is really getting the guitars, that sort of 200 to 500 range where the rhythm guitars are, is really kind of giving us that meat that we want from this rock track, which is important. So let's just A/B all those EQ moves before and after. Let's take those 4 off, and here we go. So that's making a great deal of difference, even though I'm just making small change, small change, small change in each of those processes. It's giving me that thickness. It's kind of pulling those elements together, which is working really, really nicely. Now I'm going to apply some compression to this whole mix. So I'm using this Shadow Hills mastering compressor. It's again from Plugin Alliance. And this actually gives me quite a number of things all in one. So it's got 2 compressors built in one to begin with. So I'm stereo compressing, but I'm using both an optical compressor and a discrete compressor on the left and right channels. So let me just put the gain reduction meters on the optical channels first. I'm going to turn off the discrete on the left and right, and then let me bring this in. So this is just going to be bringing in the optical compression first of all. So you can see I'm not even tickling 1 dB of gain reduction. I'm just looking for a little bit. And then exactly the same on the discrete, which comes second in the series after the optical. So I'm now, again, going to look for no more than 1 dB of gain reduction. So I'm going to bring in the discrete compressors, which are currently bypassed down here. So starting to really glue those things nicely together. But what I'm not doing is slamming the hell out of it, just looking to kind of flatten it. I only want little bits of gain reduction just to gently pull these things together. But the really nice thing you get about this Shadow Hills mastering compressor is that it's got some different kind of circuitry models. And the steel model that I'm using down here kind of gives me a really nice amount of saturation, which works really nicely in this genre, which is great. You'll notice that my level is creeping up a little bit, so this compressor in particular is making things a bit louder, but still I've got plenty of headroom, so I'm not going to worry about that just now. After that, I've then put on some tape. So I took off the Slate Digital tape and I put on this one from Softube, which I'm just really loving at the moment. So it gives me some different tape types and some different tape speeds. And then you can basically drive it through this tape as much as you like. So I'm on the 15 inches per second speed, and I'm on the type C, and then I'm driving it so that I'm getting up to around 0 dB VU here. So let me bring that in. So it's really, really subtle, but again, it's just one tiny little ingredient that's starting to give this a bit more vibe, a bit more character, take it out of that kind of digitalness and start to give it a bit more analog, natural vibe, even though, you know, we're still all in the box here. Next up, this is really the money maker, and this is where stuff is going to come up in loudness a lot. I'm using the Oxford Inflator. Now, this is quite a complex plugin, not in terms of what you've got to work with, but what it's doing under the hood. So I'm not going to go into a great long spiel about what it does under the hood, but effectively I'm going to use 100% of the effect, and I'm keeping the curve on 0. I could drive it more, but I like where it is on 0. I'm keeping the output on 0 dB, and then I'm driving it up to 10.2 dB on my input, which is going to give me a real nice kind of strong level, which is going to bring me all the way up to where I need to be in terms of loudness. So I'm actually going to bring this all the way back down, and then I'm going to slowly bring it up to that mark where I was at at 10.2 dB, so you can hear what that's doing. So you can hear straight when I turn it on without even driving the input, because this effect is here, it's given it more loudness, more level already. So there's my loudness right there. I'm basically using the Oxford Inflator to get all of the level up to a commercial standard that I need. You'll notice now that I'm all the way up to 0 dB, which is not where I want to be, because in terms of submitting stuff to a streaming platform, Spotify, for example, will say no greater than -1 dB true peak. So I'm then going to use another limiter afterwards. So my FabFilter Pro L2 afterwards, in order to make sure that I'm getting that kind of target output in terms of the true peak. So I've made sure that my true peak limiting is on, set my output to -1, and then I've also engaged my DC offset, which will just help me to get a little bit of extra headroom if there's any DC offset required. And then I'm going with just one extra little push to help me get a bit more loudness even out of this. So let's bring that in as well. And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs. I'm not gonna wait for another heartbreak. So there we go. That's my track mastered. I'm only really doing 3 things here. I'm EQing, I'm compressing, and then I'm limiting. And I'm sneakily doing a little bit of additional saturation in the middle there. 3.5 things, if you like. Now, if we go back to our reference track and A/B it with our Paramore, let's see how close we've got to this track. And I know to save your soul. Let's take you will lead to my demise. I'm not gonna wait for I mean, to my ears, that's pretty good. That's pretty close. I mean, you tell me what you think down in the comments. You let me know if you think I'm close or not, but you know, that to me sounds really, really close. And that's it, right? Nothing more to do than that. This track is mastered. So I'm now ready to bounce that out and I can upload that to streaming platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, whatever it is that you want to do with it. So thanks so much for tuning into this series. I'll be back with another one real soon. Please do make sure that you sub to the channel, give us a thumbs up, leave me any questions or comments that you've got down below, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.